One boot nudge was all it took. The moment Deputy Driscoll's toe tapped Lena Brooks's duffel bag, the air in Hollow Creek Diner shifted quiet like thunder waiting to roll. And when she pulled out that old flip phone and said, "Caleb, it's me. You're going to want to handle this," everything changed. Rain had a way of muffling the world's smearing headlights and hiding glances, but it did nothing to quiet the hum inside Staff Sergeant Lena Brooks's head. Her boots slapped against the soaked pavement as she crossed the lot to Hollow Creek Diner water, trailing down the back of her neck like cold fingers. The kind of diner that smelled like scorched bacon and burnt coffee, where the vinyl booths cracked just enough to remember better days. She didn't need a menu or a warm greeting. She needed shelter caffeine and a moment where she wasn't treated like fog on glass, seen then forgotten. Lena stepped through the door and the soft chime above barely stirred the sleepy room. Her presence, though, did. Every head glanced, some turned fully, others just shifted uneasily behind coffee cups. She didn't bother looking back. She'd felt this 100 times in a dozen towns. The wet, the cold, and the silence that trailed her like a shadow nobody wanted to claim. Her duffel hit the floor beside the corner booth with a heavy thud. Her coat, once military issue, now faded, and 3 winters past its prime clung to her shoulders. She pulled out a wrinkled $5 bill and smoothed it on the table like it was made of glass. The waitress' blonde ponytail, no older than 22, with a nervous glance that couldn't stay still, hesitated before approaching. Her name tag read Haley. Her eyes darted from Lena's coat to her face, to the soaked boots in the duffel. "You planning to order something?" she asked, not rude, not warm, just cautious. Lena didn't flinch. "Coffee. Cream if it's not trouble." Haley blinked. "All right." She turned but didn't walk away immediately. Her gaze flicked toward the counter where a man with a beard and a dish towel nodded once without a word. Then she left. Lena leaned back into the booth. Her spine cracked as it hit the vinyl, the dampness from her coat making a soft scrack as she settled. Outside, the rain hadn't let up. Everything beyond the window bled together, street lamps, headlights, tree limbs shaking in the wind. Then came the sound of the door again. Heavier this time, the kind of sound that shifted the air. 2 men in uniform entered, Deputy Mark Driscoll and Deputy Jesse Vaughn. Locals would know them by name. Lena didn't have to. You could spot their type a mile off. Clean, dry, well-fed, boots polished, eyes already sweeping the room like they owned it. Driscoll saw her first. He wasn't subtle about it. Mid-40s, barrel-chested, and the kind of man who stood with his thumbs hooked behind his belt as if it were ceremonial. He whispered something to Vaughn, who chuckled. Then they made their way over, slow and measured, like they had time to kill and power to waste. "Morning," Driscoll said, voice casual, too casual. "You waiting on someone?" Lena didn't look up. "Just a cup of coffee." Vaughn snorted behind him. "You loitering or just sightseeing?" Driscoll nodded toward her duffel. "You staying long, ma'am?" Lena finally lifted her gaze, steady as steel. "Is that a problem now?" The diner wasn't listening, but it felt like everyone had stopped chewing. Forks hovered. Haley, who'd just returned with the coffee, paused mid-step. Driscoll smiled without humor. "Could be. Safety reasons. That bag's in the way." Then, without warning, he nudged her duffel with his boot. Not a kick, just enough to mark territory. Lena's eyes dropped to the bag, then returned to his face. "You worried someone might trip?" "Things happen," he shrugged. Vaughn folded his arms. "We're not trying to make this a thing." "Neither am I," Lena replied evenly. "I'm just sitting, drinking coffee, and leaving." "But some folks might be uncomfortable," Vaughn said. That word again. "Uncomfortable." Lena exhaled slowly, like someone testing the weight of a moment. "Yeah, I know how that goes. People get real uncomfortable when they realize decency doesn't come with a badge." Vaughn stiffened and Driscoll's jaw ticked. Then he leaned in a little, elbows on the table, like he was sharing a secret. "Let me guess, you're one of those thinks this country owes you something. A medal in one pocket, attitude in the other." A spoon clattered across a plate. Someone murmured near the counter. Lena didn't blink. "You know what I came back with?" she asked. "A limp. A citation that got lost in a drawer. And a phone number I only use when I need a favor cashed in." She reached into her coat slowly. Driscoll's hand twitched near his holster. She pulled out an old flip phone. Scratched, taped, very much working. Driscoll scoffed. You calling a lawyer? No, Lena said. Just an old friend. She flipped it open. Caleb, she said into the receiver, calm and direct. Yeah. Hollow Creek Diner. 2 deputies. You know the kind. Driscoll blinked. Wait, what did you just... She cut him off with a glance. Want to give me your badge number, or should I guess? He opened his mouth, closed it. Vaughn shifted, visibly rattled now. Who the hell is Caleb? No answer. Lena hung up, slid the phone beside her mug, and took a sip. It was lukewarm. Didn't matter. Across the room, Haley backed toward the kitchen. The manager pretended to refill the salt shaker with trembling fingers. 5 minutes passed. Maybe 7. Then the door opened again, and the rain brought someone else. A man in a gray suit stepped inside, moving with purpose, phone still in hand. He stopped at the counter, showed something on his screen to the manager, and scanned the room. Deputy Driscoll, he said clearly. Driscoll turned. Who's asking? The man held up a badge. Detective Raymond Ellison, Internal Affairs. A pause thickened the room. We need to speak. Now. Outside. Vaughn looked like he'd swallowed a rock. Wait, you're that Ellison? That depends, Ellison said. You one of the two whose names just got texted to my desk with a note that said, handle immediately. Nobody moved. Driscoll glanced from Lena to the badge, then back. This a joke? Do I look like I'm laughing? Ellison's voice never wavered. Let's go. The deputies exchanged a glance, then slowly moved toward the door. The diner remained frozen. As the rain swallowed them outside, Lena finally exhaled. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. Haley approached quietly. You okay? Lena nodded. I'm fine. Haley hesitated. Can I warm that up for you? Lena looked at the cup. Yeah, sure. No smile, but something in her face softened, just for a second. Outside through the fog glass, she watched Ellison talk to the 2 deputies, hands at his side, voice low but firm. And for the first time all week, Lena didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel like a problem someone was trying to move along. She felt seen, not by strangers, but by someone who remembered what it meant to serve and what it cost to stand alone in a room full of eyes, waiting for you to break. But Lena Brooks didn't break. Not then, not ever. And now neither would the silence. Detective Raymond Ellison didn't waste time. The rain had barely stopped tracing lines down the diner's window when he stepped back inside Hollow Creek, brushing water from his blazer and nodding once toward Lena Brooks. He didn't speak to her right away, didn't need to. The moment outside had said more than words ever could. Deputy Driscoll and Deputy Vaughn were already in the parking lot, pacing, rattled, waiting for fallout. They didn't expect to land so hard and so fast. The diner's air still carried tension like static before a lightning strike, but Lena just sipped her coffee, fresh now, warm in her hand, watching them through the window like a century from the past. Ellison leaned against the counter and said something low to the manager, then turned to Haley. I need contact info for whoever was on shift during the incident, he said. Haley nodded quickly, her voice unsure. I saw it all. I know, he said. That's why I'm asking you first. The next 48 hours moved fast. Back at the Buncombe County Internal Affairs Office, Ellison pulled every complaint ever filed against Driscoll and Vaughn. Some were paper thin, just a scrawl of frustration from a citizen who felt brushed off. Others had real weight, aggressive stops, dismissive conduct, physical intimidation. 11 total. Most ended in 2 words, no action. And at the bottom of each one, Captain Ronald Mears' signature loomed like a stamp of silence. Lena didn't sleep much that week. She knew what came next, the grind of bureaucracy, the slowness of justice. But this time, someone was pushing the wheel forward. Ellison called her 2 days later. You sure you're ready for this? He asked. I don't need the spotlight, she said, but I won't let them bury it again. Good, he said, because this time we're building a record they can't ignore. Word got around town quicker than usual. A rumor, then a whisper, then an undercurrent in every diner, grocery store, and barbershop. Did you hear what happened at Hollow Creek? They didn't always get the facts right, but they got the tone right. Something snapped, and for once it wasn't the person being cornered. The department couldn't contain the momentum. Mears tried to downplay it, called it a miscommunication at first, but Internal Affairs had already pulled his override authority on prior complaints. Ellison brought the files to Lena personally, one folder at a time. They sat at a library table together, flipping through statements that had been shelved for years. A teenage boy who said Driscoll threatened him during a jaywalking stop, a woman who'd filed harassment claims after Vaughn made inappropriate comments at a traffic checkpoint, a disabled veteran told to move along while waiting for a bus. This one, Lena said, pointing to a familiar name. He used to sleep behind the bus depot. I gave him gauze and Tylenol once when his leg split open. He didn't leave a number, Ellison said. No one followed up. Because nobody cared, Lena replied. They thought no one would ever connect the dots. But dots were connecting fast. Local reporters started asking questions. A community group, most of them veterans, demanded the sheriff's office publicly release all closed IA cases going back 5 years. Within a week, the diner owner, a soft-spoken man named Daryl, posted a short statement online. Hollow Creek welcomes all guests. We do not support profiling or harassment in our establishment. Underneath, in smaller print, we stand with Staff Sergeant Lena Brooks. Haley reached out to Lena again. This time it wasn't nervous, it was grateful. I've been thinking, she said over the phone. That day I froze. I didn't know what to say. I should have stepped in. Lena didn't respond right away. Then she said, you brought the coffee. Sometimes that's more than enough. But the tide wasn't just shifting in quiet conversations. It was rolling into public view. The town council scheduled an open forum, and for the first time in years, residents filled the meeting hall to capacity. Ellison spoke first, presenting the reopened complaints and detailing the failings in internal review procedures. Then, one by one, citizens stood up. Some cried, some shook with anger. And then Gloria Patterson stepped forward, a mother with tired eyes and a worn file folder in hand. She opened it slowly, her voice catching. 3 years ago, my son was thrown against a squad car by Deputy Driscoll for raising his voice after school. He has autism. He doesn't understand boundaries the way others do. I filed a complaint. It went nowhere. They told me it was his word against the officers. She held up the folder. But I'm here now because I know we weren't the only ones. The room was silent. No one looked away. Lena wasn't in the room that night. She didn't need to be. Her presence was already there in every voice that spoke up, in every file that finally saw light. 2 days later, under mounting pressure, Deputies Driscoll and Vaughn both submitted their retirement paperwork. Captain Mears was placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Ellison called Lena the next morning. You started this, he said. You cracked something open. I didn't do it alone, she said. You showed up, Haley spoke. That mother stood tall. I just refused to shrink. The sheriff's department, facing public outcry, issued a public commitment to retrain all deputies on bias de-escalation and community engagement. They opened a portal for citizens to view case statuses in real time. They didn't say Lena's name, but everyone knew. At Hollow Creek, Haley taped a new sign to the front window. Simple block letters, all are welcome, no exceptions. Some locals grumbled, said the department was being unfairly smeared. Others, especially those who'd been dismissed for years, finally felt like their voices were being heard. Ellison kept digging. He uncovered emails from Mears instructing junior officers to keep issues internal when citizens with no fixed address filed complaints. One memo even labeled a local homeless encampment as a drain on morale. The public never saw those memos, but they saw the consequences. They saw Driscoll and Vaughn disappear from their daily beat. They saw the community wake up not in anger, but in determination. Lena stayed quiet through it all, not out of fear, but principle. She didn't want interviews. She didn't want to be anyone's symbol, but she did agree to meet with one small group, a coalition of veterans who had started organizing a response unit for fellow vets facing housing insecurity and police harassment. We need someone to help us train, the coordinator said. Not in combat, in dignity. Lena nodded. That I can do. Meanwhile, Ellison continued building the case. He cross-referenced complaints with time cards, dash cam, logs, even shift reports. And in those patterns, he found the same story: selective enforcement, unchecked aggression, and a command structure that favored silence over accountability. He told Lena if they thought this was just about a cup of coffee and a scuffed boot, they weren't paying attention. They never were, she said, until now. The second chapter of Lena Brooks's story didn't come with fireworks. It didn't need to. It came with documents, unsealed, voices raised, and power finally held to the fire. The town hadn't changed overnight. But it had changed. The question was no longer whether justice mattered, but whether anyone would ever be ignored again, without someone like Lena standing nearby, quiet and unshaken, reminding them that one voice when heard can echo far beyond a diner booth. Lena Brooks didn't wait for a headline to fade or a press conference to validate what had already been set in motion. She just packed her duffel one quiet morning and boarded a bus bound for Greensboro, North Carolina. No farewell, no attention. The second her boots stepped off the Greyhound curb and into the cracked sidewalk outside Hope Haven Shelter for Veterans, the next chapter had already begun. There were no cameras following her, no reporters waiting to ask how it felt to bring down two seasoned deputies or unravel a command structure that had buried complaints for years. She wouldn't have answered anyway. Lena hadn't done it for revenge. She'd done it so no one else had to make that kind of call from a booth soaked in rain and silence. Hope Haven was small, 8 rooms, a shared kitchen, one rusted vending machine that only took quarters, but it ran on something she recognized: grit and grace. Most of the men and women inside didn't talk much about where they'd been or what they'd lost. Lena fit in immediately. She didn't try to fix anything. She just showed up, rolled her sleeves, and did the work. Laundry duty on Mondays, soup prep on Thursdays. Sometimes she sat on the back steps with Curtis, a former mechanic from Fort Benning, who now shuffled with a limp and always had a joke tucked behind his cigarette. Some evenings she helped a Navy vet named Denise Inventory donated toiletries, the two of them, sorting toothpaste tubes by expiration date in near silence except for the soft gospel hums Denise would let slip when she thought no one was listening. Lena never talked about Asheville, not unless someone directly asked. And even then she'd shrug it off with something like, "Just stood my ground, that's all." The files, the hearings, the shifts in policy, they were still unfolding back in Buncombe County. Ellison called once a week with updates. Both deputies officially retired, he said one Friday morning. No pension, no press. Mears is under federal review now. They found language in his internal emails that's going to be hard to walk back. Lena just said good. He asked if she wanted to participate in the next panel being formed on the statewide law enforcement reform. She told him maybe. But don't make me a face of something I didn't ask for, she added. If they want my words, they better be ready for the ones that sting. That week she spent more time in the garden out back, clearing overgrowth behind the fence with a borrowed trowel and a rusted rake. A few of the younger residents joined in, mostly for the sun, maybe for the quiet. No one asked why she dug with such care, as if every weed had roots deeper than the earth allowed. Then came an unexpected visit. Haley, the same waitress from Hollow Creek. She showed up one bright afternoon in jeans and a faded Vote Local t-shirt, holding 2 paper bags of takeout. Her hair was pulled back, her face a little older somehow, like it had seen more since the day Lena sat in that corner booth. "I found out you were here," she said when Lena answered the door. "Hope you still like turkey and mustard." Lena blinked, then stepped aside. "Come in." They sat at a bench just off the back porch. The sandwich was warm. The breeze smelled like cut grass and cigarettes. Haley didn't say much at first, just unwrapped her sandwich and took small bites like she was waiting for permission to speak. Finally, she looked over. "I've been thinking about that day a lot." "Me too," Lena said. "I didn't do enough," Haley added. I froze. I waited for someone else to step in. Lena glanced up. "You didn't walk away. That's more than most." But I could have said something. She pushed. Louder, clearer. "Now you are," Lena replied. "That's what counts." Haley sat back, chewing her lip. "You ever think about writing it all down?" No, Lena said flatly. "Why? Because it mattered," Haley said. "And not just to the people in that diner. To me, to others who didn't know what that kind of courage looked like until they saw it." Lena didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted toward the street where a little girl in pink overalls was helping an older man unload canned goods from a church van. Curtis was directing them, laughing about something. A small scene, an ordinary moment, and yet it meant more than the court memos and press releases combined. "Writing it down makes it sound too clean," Lena finally said. It wasn't. Still isn't. Haley nodded slowly. "Maybe that's why people need to hear it." Lena didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. That night she folded her jacket neatly at the foot of her cot and stared at the ceiling for a long while. The flip phone sat by her side. It hadn't rung in days. She wasn't waiting for it to. What she wanted couldn't be delivered in a ringtone. What she wanted was continuity, a quiet current of change that didn't depend on one dramatic confrontation. And that's what started to happen. Over the following months, small but sharp shifts began rippling outward. Buncombe County passed a policy requiring all officer complaint files to remain publicly auditable for 5 years. A civilian review board was established. New hires in the sheriff's department had to complete a community immersion course, spending time at shelter schools and support centers before they ever put on a badge. Internal Affairs released a report detailing their findings, not just about Driscoll and Vaughn, but about Mears' role in suppressing complaints. It didn't lead the evening news, but it made the paper. And it got read. People noticed. Not all of them were kind, but enough were. One man mailed a handwritten thank you note to Hope Haven, addressed only to the veteran from the diner. Inside, he'd scribbled, "I taught my kids about you. Not what you did, how you did it." Lena never replied, but she taped the note inside her locker door. Meanwhile, she kept showing up. Every morning, every meal, every mop bucket and folded blanket and quiet prayer before lights out. She didn't need to be thanked. She just needed the work to matter. One evening as she swept the back porch, Curtis stepped outside and lit a cigarette. "Heard from Ellison again?" he asked. "Yeah," Lena said. "He says they're rewriting protocol. All complaints now have to be reviewed by 3 independent parties." Curtis exhaled. "That because of you?" "No," Lena said. "Because of what came after." Well, Curtis nodded. "Still wouldn't have happened without the first push." She didn't respond, just kept sweeping. The wind had scattered leaves all over the porch again, like the world insisting on chaos just to see who'd clean it up. As the sun dropped behind the church roof, she paused. "You know what I realized that day in the diner?" "What's that?" Curtis asked. "Respect doesn't come from uniforms. It comes from how you treat people when no one's watching." "Damn right," he said, tapping ash into the wind. And that was it. The moment passed. The world kept turning. But something had shifted and stayed shifted. Not because Lena shouted, not because she demanded a podium or marched with banners, but because she refused to let silence swallow the truth. And because of that, the next Lena, who walked into a diner with a tired jacket and a duffel bag, might not get asked to leave. Might just get her coffee without judgment. Might get seen. That was enough for now. That was everything. In a quiet diner on a rainy morning, a woman walked in looking for warmth, not trouble. But what happened next reminded us all of a deeper truth, that dignity doesn't come with a title, and silence can be more powerful than noise when paired with courage. The story of Lena Brooks teaches us that injustice often wears a subtle face. It doesn't always come in the form of shouting or violence. Sometimes it looks like a boot nudging a bag, a tone laced with doubt, or a question asked with the wrong kind of intent. But Lena didn't raise her voice. She didn't push back with anger. She pushed back with truth, with composure, with a quiet phone call that said, "You're not doing this to me today." Her strength wasn't just in her service to this country. It was in how she carried herself after the service ended. No medals on her chest, no home to return to, yet still standing firm in her worth. She reminded everyone that you don't need power to demand respect, you just need conviction. And for the rest of us, her story offers a challenge. Will you speak up when you see something wrong? Will you listen to that small voice in your gut that says, "This isn't right"? Because that's where change begins. Not in grand gestures, but in small acts of integrity that ripple outward. To those wearing a uniform, this is also a reminder. Authority is not permission to judge. The badge is a tool of service, not superiority. When we forget that, we lose the very trust that makes peace possible. And to the ones who've been dismissed, overlooked, or mistreated because of how you look, where you're from, or what you carry, you are not invisible. Your presence matters. Your voice matters. And your story, like Lena's, has the power to shift the ground beneath those who thought they could stand unchecked.